Tell me when.
All right. So what are we doing today, Dad?
Well, these pickling jars are being sterilized.
So we're pickling cucumbers.
Pickling cucumbers. They're not pickles until we put them in a brine and they get pickled.
Okay.
And so,
So
in
what
order
did
to
we
do
do
that,
over
first
here?
you want to sterilize the jars, which we've done. And now we've got to pull them out of here.
And how did we sterilize the jars?
Well, we put them in a pot of boiling water put them in a pot of water with a little plate on the bottom so that the jars don't crack.
Okay.
And then what we do is we get them boiling for 15 minutes or 10 minutes. That sterilizes the jars, and once we do that, then we can pull them out, let them cool down enough to handle, and then we start filling them with the ingredients.
And the water's about an inch above the jars, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
And then they got to boil, put a timer on for 10 minutes, and now we're taking them out.
yes. And this is kind of a hard part because you can't even get them out without spilling a little bit of water back in there.
Yeah.
And instead of just pouring the water back into the pot, we want to pour it into the sink because we still need to put those jars back in, but they'll be full of pickles,
Oh,
of
yeah.
cucumbers, and
Gotcha.
everything else. So use your little tool to empty the jars, set them to cool before you want to handle them, and repeat.
And be careful not to burn yourself.
Exactly. That water's very hot.
I'm gonna move this out of the way.
Your best friend and necessary tool is this little grabber. I'm not sure what they call them, but it's a jar lifter.
That sounds official.
Okay, we'll go with that. So you spill a little water on the stove and it's hot and it's clean. It's just about a matter of drying it out when you clean your stove. So there's one more to go. And now we let them cool down to the point where we can handle them without burning ourselves, which should only take 5 minutes.
Okay.
And then we commence with filling it with all the different ingredients we're using,
Okay.
which we'll go into at
Well,
next
while they're
stage.
cooling, why don't we say, what is in this brine? How did we make this?
This brine has a combination of salt, pickling salt, not regular table salt. Pickling salt, which has no iodine in it, and water. So the ratios vary, but the recipe we're using is, I think,
Mom said this one is 4 cups white vinegar, 12 cups water,
yes,
and 2/3 cup pickling salt.
yes. So you have to
And-
dissolve the salt, make sure everything's evenly spread out.
And you have to use a metal spoon,
Yes.
not a wood spoon.
A wooden spoon has the opportunity to introduce bacteria that might be on the spoon, but a metal spoon does not.
Okay.
So that's
And then you
phase
let-
one.
You put the lid on and you let it boil for about the same amount of time that the jars are sterilizing, about
Yes,
10
yes,
minutes. So they're
exactly.
hot at the same time as the jars are
Right.
done.
Once we begin to fill the jar, once we've got the jars filled and we begin to fill the brine into the jars, we want both vessels at high boil.
Okay.
And that is phase one.
Okay.
Phase two, when Annie gets her gun. Oh, that's a Beatles thing. Never mind. All right,
Okay.
On
Can
to
we
phase
start
two.
filling these, or do we have to wait for them to cool off?
they're going to be hot to the touch for quite a while, or for a couple minutes. So
Okay.
we'll
Well,
wait.
in the meantime, what are we going to be filling them with?
We're going to put, for the tannins that are in, and we'll want to rinse these are grape leaves. And like with horseradish leaves and oak leaves, there's tannins. And the tannins are what keeps the product from beginning to get soggy. So when you pickle them, this will keep them nice and crispy.
Okay.
So we'll first put a piece of, or a whole grape leaf, fully rinsed, which we have to do yet, facing up, the green side facing up. Followed by however much garlic you want to use, with a couple of small doses of,
We've got our peeled garlic.
yeah, a couple small doses of maybe 1/8 of a teaspoon of each, with black peppercorns and whole mustard seeds. This is just the recipe we use. There's a ton of different ways of going about it. Followed by a little clump of the dill seeds, this dill head and a small clump of dill leaves,
Okay.
or dill weed as it's called. And then we start filling it with cucumbers as much as we can keep it below the line where the brine's going to be, which we want to be a half an inch from the top for head space, they call it.
Okay.
That allows for expansion, and once you're pickling in the hot water bath, the air will be ejected as the process goes on, and once you get the air out, you pull the jars out, you set them on the shelf or on the counter, and then the lids continue to let oxygen out, and when they do, the lids, you can hear them audibly pop.
Oh yeah, I've heard that.
And when they pop, you know that it's sealed. But you still don't want to handle them. You don't want to have them out in a windy area. You want them to be out of the sun on a kitchen table or something, and let them all seal. They don't all do it at once, for
And
whatever
you'll
reason.
know if they don't seal after it's cooled down, and if you press the top, if it pops back up, then it's not sealed.
You never want to press the top. If it hasn't sealed after about an hour, it's not going to. So then you put it in the refrigerator, and you have refrigerator pickles.
Yeah.
So nothing goes to waste.
Yeah.
So let's rinse
Okay.
these, and
All right.
then we'll get ready to go on to filling the jars.
You're gonna rinse those, and then do we need to put the lids into some warm water
We got the lids.
to soften them?
I'm gonna put this in warm water and just soften the rubber.
Okay.
There's plenty of warm water right in here. We could probably use some of that.
Okay.
We don't want to boil the lids. You don't want to completely turn the rubber on the lids to mush. So that's all it takes. As we get the water warm. Okay. Now, I'd like to spread them around so they don't stick to one another on top of each other. I want to make sure each lid gets a chance to soften without sticking together with the next lid.
Okay.
And we'll just set this off to the side with the lid on it. Keep that heat in. And we'll keep the heat in here so that it's not so hard to heat up again when we're ready for it. So now we'll rinse the leaves just to make sure any dust and whatnot can come off of them.
Well, I'll rinse the rest of those if you want to start packing the jars.
Okay.
So
Let
we've
me
got-
take one moment to sit down so my back can straighten up a little
We'll
bit.
take an intermission.
Intermission.
We'll be right back. Hey. All right, we're back. Now
back.
we're stuffing the pickle jars. Okay.
Yep.
So the green leaf side facing up.
Yes. And if it doesn't, you're in a hard time, you take a long knife and position it the way you want.
Okay.
And now you have to add all the major
So like
ingredients.
2 garlics,
2 garlics,
and we're doing about an 1/8 teaspoon of
Yeah.
both whole
probably
mustard
closer
seed.
to a 1/4 teaspoon, but it's still as much, it's according to taste.
Well, I like lots of mustard. That. And then you don't need the whole stem, but you put like just one of
The
these
stem,
in.
you know, the stem. The only reason you take the stem off is because it can kind of get in the way.
And then you put a little of the fronds,
Yes.
like that much.
Yes. Perfect.
Then start packing it with the cubes, right?
Yep, we got everything else in place, so, and now we need a knife in case some of them are longer than they need to be, in which case, we take a little piece off and save it for later. Those seem to be, like, that one's gonna probably need a piece off of it. So, if our production assistant can acquire a knife, we'll be able to proceed. Oh, thank you.
No, that's fine.
We'll save those chunks to fill in later.
You have the garlic in there, right? Yep.
We were trying to make sure we save enough room at the top of the jar so everything gets submerged.
Yeah.
So if it's a little too close for comfort, you just snip off a little on the end. This one right here might be a little too close for comfort. Not that one.
This one?
No, this guy. See? Can you get it? There you go. Perfect. And nothing will go to waste.
And you want to pack them tight, not loose?
You want to pack them and you want to fill as many in there as you can without breaking them apart when you're doing it. The more the better. Well, wait till we're done with this, though.
Okay, so I think that's probably packed enough.
You might be able to pick another one and put it in there. See, there's a little bit of a gap right there. If it fits, great.
I'll try to find a small.
There you go. See?
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, now we
So we
repeat
just
the
do
same
that
thing.
for all of them?
Yeah, but we also
Oh yeah, we put
do
this
the
stuff
same thing we
back.
did on the bottom.
Couple
with
garlics.
Couple garlics. We don't put more peppers and mustard in. We don't need that.
Just
Just,
garlic.
you got garlic
dill.
and some dill. And then we put our grape leaf on top.
And another one of like the yellow guys, right?
Yes.
And then the
Perfect.
grape leaf has to go the green side down.
Down,
So it's like
facing the
sandwiching them.
Right. Okay. That jar is ready.
Okay.
Now we'll just keep going through the jars doing the same thing, and then we'll be ready to go on to phase 3, the actual canning.
Okay. Then we'll take another intermission
Okay.
and we'll fill these up. Okay. So we are back. Cucumbers are packed in the jars. The brine is back to boiling, and the water in the pressure cooker is back to boiling too.
Not a pressure cooker, it's
Or
just a
just
water
the hot-
bath.
yeah.
Water bath and the brine are both boiling, and we'll leave them both on. And we'll begin to fill the jars all at once so that we can, well, one at a time, so that we can put them into the water bath all at once.
Gotcha.
So what we'll start with is the brine on high still. You want it to boil throughout the process of filling the jars. And just start filling. And as you go, you'll see bubbles come up. And part of the thing to watch for is how much air bubbles might be trapped inside the jar. And some folks will take a butter knife or a plastic spoon or something like that that sort of poke around the jar in order to get those all those bubbles out of there. But I don't usually bother with that. But when the jars are packed pretty tightly, it's not necessary. So then you want to take, when the jars are very hot at this point, you want to take and wipe off the top of the lid, grab the lid, place it on, grab the ring, and again, the jar being very hot, you want to turn the ring finger tight, no more than that. And air needs to escape during the process. I'll do one more,
Okay.
and then my associate will take over.
And you don't ever check for bubbles by sticking like a knife or chopstick or something in there?
I don't usually bother because it typically, when they're packed this tightly, that isn't as much of an issue as it is with, for example, with peppers. We have more spaces for air to be trapped. Would need that, but
So you're filling them almost up to the top, and they need to have about a ½ inch of liquid above the top of the vegetable.
a ½ inch headspace. And we're making sure that there's no debris on top of the jar. Grab a lid, put it on nice and firm, making sure that there's nothing sticking up above that needs to be submerged. And then finger tight.
Okay.
And now we'll switch it around to the cameraman, the camera person, coming around to do this. Next two lids, next two jars.
All right. Ooh, I smell that brine.
It's very strong. Well, not so much strong that it's with the vinegar. It does make you react just a little bit. A little more.
A little more.
Yeah. The headspace is not critical. It's useful to
You
allow.
need to just make sure, like,
Yeah.
that's all in there.
Right, and see there's a
Yeah.
little piece of stem that needs to stay submerged. And now, on to the wiping of the lid's rim, or the jar's rim. Perfect. We're grabbing a lid and a ring. Finger tight. Okay, one last jar to fill.
Oh, and that just made a weird popping noise. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Trying to maintain about a ½ inch headspace, which I think we have. Okay, we get our last lid. And our last ring. Now we can put the lid back on the brine and take the lid off of the water bath, at which point we'll individually place them in. Would you like me to do this, or you want to do it?
I'll film you doing it.
Okay. So in we go, making sure that our jars and the water are close in temperature so that the jars don't crack. That's why we have the brine boiling the whole time we're filling the jars. And a lot of these things you'll just learn by experience. You will break some jars along the way. Mostly it's due to either a jar that's been dropped and damaged in some way, or that's been put in too cold for the hot water. Now we'll put the timer on for 5 minutes. And we wait for the magic to happen. Once we get the 5 minutes cooking time done, it's not cooking the cucumbers right now so much as it is making sure that we get proper air evacuation so that the lids will pop and seal the jar.
Okay.
So, on the next phase in about 5 minutes.
Got it.
The jars, you can see the jars there's emitting oxygen bubbles, air bubbles, and so that means we're getting the effect we want. We want the air to escape from the jar, and in the process, it will cause that lid to pop and seal. This is the part we have to be very careful. They're extremely hot. But don't be surprised one or two just pop and seal right away, and others might take a half an hour.
Okay.
Look at that beautiful jar full of goodness. And now we wait for the pop, and our job is done.
Okay. And that's how you
That's how you
water bath.
water bath cucumbers and turn them into magic pickles. The recipes can vary from your taste. More garlic, more dill, less dill. Other ingredients you can add like coriander seeds and things like that, but it's all up to you.
Or jalapenos, don't you put those in there
Jalapenos,
sometime?
You put some a little bit of a bite, a little bit of a heat to the flavor, which is always preferred, although we didn't have any yet. So, and that's all it is.
And then you let these sit on a shelf for a couple weeks before you eat them?
At least a couple weeks so that you can get the full benefit of the flavors. It does take a while for those flavors to completely meld.
And then these are good to sit on the shelf for like a year,
A couple years.
couple years.
Yeah.
Okay,
Usually they don't last that long.
got it.
Yeah.
All right,
That's
thanks,
it.
Dad.
You're welcome.
Okay, couple amendments.
Amendments, a little helpful information that you can use to keep track of which batches are which, if you'd like to date them according to month and date and year, which I don't usually bother with, but when the jars are sealed, give them enough time to cool down a little bit, and then you can take the lids off, which by then will be easily loosened and not hard to get off. And at that point, I put the dates on it, and then you're all set. And or if you're making several different flavors or types of ingredients, you can keep track by writing batch number 1 or batch number 2. When you do, then you'll know without having to wonder, well, which one was which. So just a little helpful hint to keep track of what your hard work is coming to. So,
Thank you.
very good. And so after all the work we've done, I had a jar in the refrigerator that didn't seal. So if you have jars that don't seal, no worries, just put it in the refrigerator and you have refrigerator pickles. And so after a month of being in the refrigerator, we'll see how the taste came out and how the flavors are and how much we have to look forward to with the next batch. So there's a pickle right here. I'll put it into pieces so that we can have other members of the crew. Oh, where's my knife?
Oh, knife.
Knife. And then,
So would these be as crunchy if they had sealed and they were just sitting on the shelf?
Yes. Yes. Although when you do have some that have been on the shelf, it's always best to eat them cold so that when you take your first bite, a warm pickle doesn't feel as crispy, even though it might be.
Yeah.
It's just sort of a texture and temperature thing. So let's try one and see how we did.
I can hear the crunch.
Can you hear the crunch? Perfect. We did good. They came out just the way you like them. A little bit less garlicky than some folks like. I could put more garlic in them. But at this point, everything we did well enough that we have a nice product at the end.
Okay, do we want to get another?
Should we get an innocent
Sample?
bystander sample?
Sure, I'll try.
Sure. Let's see if we can see what the crowd thinks.
And I'm not a fan of like too much garlic, so I think this
Right.
would be perfect for me. Yeah, I mean, it's so bright,
It's a
really delicious.
it's a happy outcome.
It really is.
Outstanding.
Try some.
Yeah.
Lots of crunch.
Those are so good.
Well,
I would add more garlic because I love garlic.
Yeah, as I do. Your mom's a little less garlicky fan than I am. But everything is from the garden. The pickles are from the garden. The dill is from the garden. The garlic is from the garden. And the grape leaves are from the neighbor's yard.
What did
So,
you ask for?
Oh, there's another lid just popped.
We heard it.
The magic is underway. So all's good that ends well, and I think we did well.
Okay. Thanks for our first inaugural
Dad's video.